shifting trends in adoption.
Okay, I am getting notification that we are now live. So welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Catherine, and I am the Community Engagement Liaison here with Adopt for Life, a not-for-profit charitable organization that provides supports, resources, and advocacy to families who are part of the adoption, kinship, and customary care communities. Now, before we actually get into everything, I do want to begin with a land acknowledgement. So I would like to take pause and acknowledge the lands that we are situated on today. I respect that we're probably joining from all around this beautiful province and maybe even beyond. So I personally reside in the traditional territory of Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, Ojibwe, and the Mississauga of the Credits people within Treaty 19, now home to many diverse nations, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations as a first step towards improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures, and to recognize and acknowledge the historic and ongoing devastating effects of colonialism and racism in the name of assimilation across Canada, and to consider how we each can, in our own way, action forward in a spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. So this month, for this month's Snack and Chat, we reached out to our amazing community partners at the Adoption Council of Ontario to help answer questions for prospective parents, and for those who may just be beginning the process of adoption, kinship, or customary care. I do apologize if there is a bit of background noise. I have a puppy who is also needing attention right now, so I'm sorry. I'm trying to do my best. So my guest today is Judy Archer, and I've had the pleasure of working alongside Judy for several years on various projects, including supports for families who are just beginning their processes. So I am going to formally introduce you, Judy, but I do want to mention that this is actually just a shortened version of her professional bio. So her experience span across this beautiful country in many ways. So I do just want to acknowledge that this is just a small little excerpt of the amazing work that she does. So thank you very much, Judy, first and foremost. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited for the questions that we have. These are some questions that come up a lot within our community, and you're just a wealth of knowledge. And I know that our community is really going to benefit from hearing from you. So Judy Archer is a master's of social work and a registered social worker, and has practiced social work for over 40 years in both Ontario and British Columbia. Most of her career has been devoted to working in adoption, foster care, and mental health. And she has also practiced in a diverse range of community agency and organizations in both urban and rural settings. Judy had a successful private practice, providing training and full range of clinical services to individuals, couples, and families living in Vancouver Island in the mainland of BC. She works part-time as a clinical supervisor of the mental health team at the Tsawwassen Health and Kawachan tribe of Duncan, BC. I apologize. I tried my best to pronounce. And since 2016, Judy has worked in a variety of capacities through the ACO in Toronto. And she currently is a part-time centralized adoption coordinator in the Centralized Adoption Intake Services program. So this is the program that you guys use as your first step when you're starting this journey. Given her lifelong passion and commitment for excellence in adoption and permanency, Judy is honored to be working with the ACO, and we are just as honored to have you here today. So thank you so much. We have
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for that lovely introduction and that lovely welcome. I'm thrilled to be here.
And I wish people had the opportunity to actually read your full bio. So maybe if I'm sure it's a part of some of the websites that you're part of and other webinars, because it really is a fantastic professional career you've had. We have a lot of questions that are lined up, and I'm just going to go ahead and start asking them if that's
Okay.
with
Yeah.
you. And then for those of you who are watching live, we are really hoping that this can be meaningful, and we'd love to hear feedback from you. So if you do have questions for us or have comments based on what we're talking about, please feel free to join in the conversation in the comments, whether that's live here right now or on replay. I do just want to ask for you to be mindful, because this is a public platform, to just be mindful of any identifying information that you may be sharing when you have this conversation with us. That being said, that was a really long intro, so I apologize. The first question that we have from our community is, waiting for a match can be really difficult for a lot of prospective parents and caregivers. Do you have any tips or suggestions for those who may be struggling with this?
What a wonderful question. Excellent question. I think the waiting period, which is also known as that state of limbo, that state of uncertainty, can be extremely challenging for prospective adoptive parents at any stage of the adoption process. Whether you're just starting out and waiting to hear from a CAS worker or a private practitioner, or you're waiting for a match, right? Or you're waiting for placement, it can be very stressful. Not only for the adoptive parents, but also for waiting children who are waiting for an adoptive family. So I really want to acknowledge you for raising that question. There are definitely many things that people can do to ease their adjustment to the state of limbo known as the waiting period. And number one is to join a support group. So I know people wouldn't be here if they didn't know about Adopt for Life, but I think it's critically important that families have contact and connections with other people who are going through the same journey as themselves, who have families that mirror theirs, right? So number one, I would recommend that. Number two, adoption doesn't begin and end with home study and pride training. So wherever possible, if you can use your time productively by attending any webinars on topics of adoption, read books on topics of adoption, review movies. There are many movies out there based on true experiences, lived experiences with adoption. Really, really important. What I recommend to absolutely everybody who calls me at Central Adoption Intake Services is this. If you're watching movies, reading books and articles, maintain a journal. Really helpful if you keep a journal with a synopsis of the information about the webinar you've attended, the presenter who gave the webinar itself, and summarize a couple of things that you've learned about adoption and yourself from reviewing that particular resource. That will serve a number of purposes. Number one, I think it will heighten your understanding about the issue, the topic under discussion. Number two, it helps you learn more about your own strengths, skills, and resources, right? And number three, it allows you to track your own personal growth in your understanding about issues of relevance to becoming an adoptive parent. Finally, when you have that type of journal, you will be that much more prepared to engage in a very meaningful discussion with your adoption worker, both at the home study stage, as well as when you're being matched with a child, right? If you've already started given serious thought to issues pertinent to waiting children and the lifelong journey of adoption. I encourage people to sign up for newsletters. Both Adopt for Life and the Adoption Council of Ontario offer outstanding quality newsletters where you can keep abreast of shifting trends in adoption, any important and upcoming activities or events that might be of interest or relevance to you in your situation. I've got a lot of suggestions. Catherine, can I just plow ahead?
Sure, go ahead. I just wanted to say that when you had talked about the journaling, I found that when we went through our adoption journey, we were actually just speaking about this before, is there's so many acronyms and there's so much learning that I think having a one place to go back to is huge. And I found for us, it was like the wait seemed so long and never ending. But when that match happened and you were going to meetings and you were learning and you were, you know, getting things ready, it happened so fast. So I really love the idea of the journal, because I think that it just gives you that one spot to go back to. So sorry, yeah, please keep going. Because these are great.
Anything that you're learning, if you keep a record of it, a diary about it, right? You will marvel when you go back to the beginning several weeks or several months later to see. You'll have some concrete evidence of how much you've learned, how much knowledge you've gained, and how much you've grown, right?
Exactly. And now my kids, 10 years later, they make fun of us because of all of this stuff that we wrote in there. So it's something kind of really neat to share with them about the process and with preteens, it's a really cool thing. So sorry, please keep going, because these suggestions are fantastic.
One suggestion I used to always give families when we were doing pre-adoption training, even home studies, is to start developing a budget with the type of child in mind that you're hoping will join your family, the child or the sibling group. So go shopping, price clothing, shoes, extracurricular activities, music lessons, right? Anything like that whatsoever, to give you a realistic sense about the kinds of funds that you're going to require once that little one comes home. It helps you anticipate, right? Some of where you're going to have to tweak your budget once you shift from being a single parent or a couple to being a family group. Similarly, I always encourage people that if you are thinking of doing home renos, always advisable to do them before the child joins your family, right?
Yes.
We know that adding a new child to the family, Catherine, can be very stressful. It is expected. It's one of the predictable adjustments that people will make. Is it's stressful adding a new child to the family, right? It's like adding a new string to that hanging mobile. And so if you're going to navigate all the new challenges and demands of parenting, it's best to limit all the other changes and adjustments in your life that you have control over. Yes, so 100%. Best to do the home renos in advance if possible. Reducing stress in areas wherever you have control is also recommended. And one way to even know whether or not you're experiencing or you're navigating situations that might be adding stress to you or your family is to look at the Holmes Race stress scale. And I think we're going to add that to the chat box. It's a remarkable tool that has been around for a long time that helps people get a realistic perspective on how they're coping. We know that if you reach a certain number on that scale, then your ability to cope adaptively could be at risk, right? So what areas of my life do I have some control over now that I can effect change so that I'll be in a better place emotionally, right, to rise to the challenges of parenting? If you have children in your home, and particularly if your children are in the teenage years, there's a similar scale for youth.
Wow. I wish that was available when we were adopting, because I agree. It's because I know for us, we were just so focused on the adoption and on the process that it was hard to even think how to reduce the stressors, but they're still there. Everyday life still happens, although you may kind of be tunnel vision. So I think that would be a great thing. I wish I would have had that actually, just to kind of help reduce, because you can't really anticipate how stressful that transition is. And you think you'll be ready, but it comes at you pretty hard and fast sometimes.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I think what a scale like this one does too is help us evaluate how have I managed with the stresses that are on that list now? How did I cope, right? So what are my existing coping strategies on a scale of 1 to 10? Is it an area that maybe I can work on during the waiting period, right?
Yeah.
How am I managing stress? So again, is it something that I can work on because one of the requirements, I think, or yeah, one of the requirements of adoptive parenthood is helping our children learn how to manage stress, how to regulate their emotions in healthy ways. So it's a good time just to do a self-evaluation. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess with that idea in mind, if you're able to go on that long-awaited vacation now, go away to get refreshed, to restore, to relax, so that you are ready for that youngster when the social worker gives you a call to see if you might be a potential match for a child that they have in mind. Once you start parenting, your opportunities for childless, child-free vacations will go on pause for many, many years.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, I don't know if too many people who are joining us today have children. I have a few suggestions if you're already parenting children. Shall I go through some of them?
I think so, yeah. Some of the families that I see here do have children as well.
Oh, wonderful. So you can use the waiting period, and this is something that maybe your adoption workers discussed with you when going through the home study, but it's critically important to the adjustment of the entire adoptive family. If the children in the family, the pre-adopted children or the homegrown children, have had some preparation for the addition of a new sibling. So again, together, perhaps watch movies and read books on adoption. There's many out there to promote discussion about the child's feelings, their beliefs, and their expectations about what it's going to be like to have a young child, or maybe even an older sibling, join the family. And it could be helpful to also explore with your children some of the joys and challenges they've encountered in their friendship network, right? So when children have friends and they have conflict, right, with their next door neighbor or the little classmates at school, they can put that friendship on pause for a while, right? They can take a time out from each other. But once a new youngster joins the family, there's no taking any breaks from one another. They have to learn to live together. So it's a good way to talk about how they're learning to communicate, problem solve, manage stress that occurs in their interpersonal relationships right now. And what have they learned that's going to help them navigate some of the predictable challenges of having a sibling that they're going to have to share mom or dad's time with, right? Post-placement, a parent's time with. Another thing that sometimes helps, we want to reduce change wherever possible, both for the new child joining the family, but also the ones who are currently a part of the existing family unit. So long before a newcomer comes, I would recommend two things. One is to start instituting rituals and routines that you're going to practice post-placement. So for example, in a two-parent family, if both parents currently tuck the child into bed at night, perhaps consider having just one of you do that now, so that when the new child comes, the alternate parent, both kids are going to get someone to tuck them into bed at night and just alternate. Does that make sense? Is that clear?
It's really, because I'm thinking about family dynamics and, like you said, routines and schedules. Like when we adopted, that just kind of flew out the window for us, and it made things very difficult for not only our older two children who are already at home, but for us as well, because we felt we were, kind of scattered and trying to do too many things at once. So I think having a plan ahead of time and even making sure everyone agrees on it, it would have been a huge thing for us. That's a great suggestion.
Oh, good. Yeah. And another one is when a new child comes into the home, it's really important that there's quality time between parents and the new child to facilitate attachment, right? To facilitate and strengthen the parent-child relationship. And one way that parents can do that is by, it can be in structured activities, or as simple as saying, I'm going to the grocery store. Do you want to join me? Or I have to run to fill up the car with gas. Do you want to come and join me? Right? So if you plan on doing something like that, perhaps start doing it now with the homegrown kids or the previously adopted children. If it's not part of your regular routine, right? And if you have more than one child, alternate. Johnny, you want to come and join me? I have to run and go to the bank.
Yeah.
And the next time, Tommy, I need some company in the car, come with me. So the children won't feel displaced, right? As displaced by the attention you're giving the newcomer if they're accustomed to this type of routine.
That's fantastic. My goodness. That's a lot. I think that so many times we hear from families that they feel almost like you go through the home study and there was so much to do, and then you're kind of paper ready or adopt ready, and it's like nothing. But there's actually a lot of things that families can do. It's just learning about what these options are, because some of the things that you've suggested, I never even thought of myself. So this is just the benefit of having these support groups and having chats like this, because you get a wealth of information and realize there's actually so much that you can be doing. And when your mind is busy and you're physically busy, it doesn't feel like it's too much of a long wait, as it would, you're just feeling like you're just sitting and doing nothing.
Right.
So I really appreciate these suggestions. I'm sure our community does too. Actually, we've been getting a lot of comments as you've been chatting. A lot of people are agreeing with a lot that you're saying, and a lot of people actually are picking up great tips as well. Is what we're seeing.
Good, great. I'm glad it's helpful.
Yeah,
just a couple more. Just a couple more for that first question.
Yes.
One is to develop a safety plan with your existing children, right? So part of preparation of your current family unit is to let them know how some children, older children, cope with normal feelings of fear, anxiety, panic, homesickness for a previous foster parent, right? Some of our kids do have difficulty regulating their emotions. Some of our kids have issues around explosive anger. Yeah. So it can be quite frightening to other children if they've never witnessed that before. So talking in advance about some of the possibilities and how your family plans to respond. So if the plan is when the new child is struggling, to say it's Johnny's time with mommy and you're going to go in the bedroom and help that child self-regulate, right? Let them know in advance, I'm not ignoring you, I'm not mad at you, but Johnny's really hurting and needs mommy's full attention right now, right? And what can they do for self-soothing when you're not immediately accessible, particularly if you don't have a co-parent in the home, right?
That is so important to have that done preliminary, like to pre-do this, because when you're actually in that potential crisis or there is a safety risk or someone really needs that extra support, it's pretty hard to think on your feet. So I really love that suggestion.
Yeah. Oh, good. And it's a safety plan, right? Yeah. So we call this safety plan, and just having those kind of conversations, and also having conversations about what that child is feeling, if they're raging, right? Or if they're saying things that the others might construe as being hurtful, because we know often young children will say, quote unquote, hurtful things because they don't have vocabulary to express their feelings in any other way, right? So just to kind of normalize it for children, and also reassure them that in time things will get better. And again, maybe reflecting back on other stressful situations that you've mastered or crises that you've recovered from, right? I also encourage kids in a family to start keeping a journal about their own thoughts and feelings, and just get into a routine habit of reviewing your child's journal if they're comfortable doing so. So when the newcomer comes into the home, this is something they're going to do on automatic pilot, because we really want to uncork feelings, not just for the new child, but the existing children. And one way to uncork is to talk about it, or to write it down, or to draw pictures, right? And then when you come together with parents afterwards and share your feelings, it strengthens that bond, because the child feels their emotions and feelings have been acknowledged, they have been normalized, and they've been validated. Yeah, your feelings are important to me. So doing it now, so it just becomes routine in the aftermath of placement. To the same extent, if you're not doing it now, I also recommend weekly meetings, weekly family meetings. And it can be formal or informal with a little agenda, but get the family in the habit of bringing their, the high points of the week to share with the entire family, but also some of the struggles they've had, so that everybody learns that as a family, we're going to address problems together, right? And the parents will decide which ones they can resolve with everyone's input, or which ones perhaps will require mom or dad's immediate and individual attention.
I love that. Yeah.
Just a couple more things. One is with new children who are joining a family by adoption, older kids I'm referring to who have language, really want to teach them how to become aware of their feelings and learn how to communicate them, to learn that it's safe to talk about feelings. So again, any storybooks with themes of feelings. One example would be, this is from way back when, but Grover moves to Sesame Street when Sesame Street was big, right? And Grover talked a lot about how hard it was to be the new kid on the block. So having those kinds of conversations with your children, or books that facilitate that type of discussion. There are a number of board games. One is called the Ungame. There's no winners, there's no losers. You draw cards, and the questions all revolve around what's the best thing that happened to you today, right? It's called the hardest thing that happened in the last week, the Ungame. It's a therapeutic game, and families can start playing it with their children now, right? And so some nights you might play Scrabble, some nights you might play Monopoly, and some nights you might play the Ungame. But again, it just facilitates the airing, the uncorking and airing of feelings. And finally, I'll let you know that through the Adoption Council of Ontario, we do offer a number of supports and services. And one of those supports is called Kids Hangout Sessions. And this is a group for the adopted child. So, and these are groups that are structured around fun-oriented activities. It could be arts and crafts, or it can be scavenger hunts, games. The children themselves have a lot of input in planning what's going to transpire in the group. The groups right now are exclusively for the adopted child, right? And it's one way for them to gain support from their peers, to meet other kids, to have mirrors of themselves and learn, I'm not alone. There are other adopted children out there for me. But letting your child know as part of that preparation, there are going to be things that we're going to do as a family. There's going to be things that are just for you that you've always done. And for your new brother or sister, there's going to be things that are just for them. And wherever you can draw examples from your own personal life experiences to normalize that. So again, it's part of preparation. It's reducing the shock. It's reducing that feeling of I'm being treated differently, right? Or they're getting special treatment, right? We're just normalizing. One of the, I guess, differences between biological and adoptive families is there are specific services that might pertain to the adopted sibling if they themselves aren't adopted.
Yeah, and I think I love the option that there's support for everybody in the family. So adoptive parents, they have or kinship or customary care families. There's support groups, and there's things out there. There's support for the adoptee themselves. There are connections you can make with siblings as well. So I think just researching what's in your area and knowing what's available, and because a lot of things are virtually now as well. So just connecting with communities to know what's out there, I think is huge. And just knowing that you're not alone in all of this, I think is a big piece of it.
Yeah, it's a great point, Catherine, is doing the research now on your anticipated needs. And then by talking to other families in Adopt for Life, for example, one question I would throw out is, what have you learned? What would you do differently based on what you know now? Or what services do you wish you would have known about, right? So that you can glean from people with true lived experience.
Yes, absolutely. And this is actually a great segue. So you're talking about one of the programs that the ACO offers. You guys have such a wealth of resources. I know you have the centralized intake, but that's actually just a small portion of what you do. So I'm wondering if you can chat a little bit more about what types of resources that the ACO provides and how families can actually access them.
Happy to. So I was thinking maybe what I would do here is maybe I would screen share. Perfect. And show them our website. How would that be?
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Okay, let me just make sure I can do that here.
Sure. And I know your website has changed. It's just so beautiful as well. And I think there was, I'm always learning about the different resources. So it'd be great for families to actually see how to access it and what everything is.
Can you see it, Catherine, our homepage? So yeah. I'll give you a brief synopsis of our amazing services. And this is kind of a review that I do with people who are phoning us for the very first time. Number one is I encourage everybody to, again, sign up for a newsletter through the ACO and Adopt for Life. And that's the link to our newsletter. It's under About Us, rather. Centralized Adoption Intake, that's the program I'm a part of. And there's 5 of us coordinators in this program, and it does a wonderful job of providing, you know, an overview of the adoption process, the adoption options here in Ontario. And so if you look under Adoption Basics, you'll see the different links. The one that I encourage people to make sure you read is the one on openness, or the role of child welfare in adoption. Under types of adoption, we have a decision-making matrix for people who aren't sure about the type of adoption they want to pursue. So it gives a nice summary.
This was fantastic when I saw this.
Oh, good, Catherine. Yeah. So yeah, I know you're not going to remember everything now. So I'll just highlight. The roadmap is a visual of the process to a public adoption. And under the galaxy of adoption, there's a couple of videos here that provide insight into the impact of adoption on children themselves, right? What their feelings are. And I think the more we learn, the more we can empathize and understand our children, yeah, the better. So that's the central adoption. I mentioned Adopt Ontario. I really encourage our families to go on our Adopt Ontario website. This is a program that's funded by the ministry, and the goal of this program is to facilitate recruitment and matching, recruitment of families for children in the child welfare system, and matching of children to prospective adoptive parents. And one way they do this, they have many different strategies, but one way they do this is through a very sophisticated computerized matching program. It's kind of like Match.com is the best way we can describe it. So it's good to read this and just become familiar with it. There's some stats that are always helpful to know about, such as 3/4 of adoptions today will involve some degree of openness, right? And 100% of children available through the public system will have experienced loss and trauma. So trauma such as separation from an attachment figure, could be a beloved foster parent. It could be the trauma of exposure to domestic violence, that type of thing. But we know that our kids are capable of healing, right? And you get the opportunity on this website to read profiles of children in Ontario who are currently waiting for adoptive families. And to get on this website, the children have to consent. They have to know what the meaning of adoption is, what it will involve, and they've consented. They're ready. They're looking for and in need of an adoptive family. So it's one really good way during the waiting period to raise awareness to the realities of adoptive parenthood.
Yeah. And I believe, Judy, just for those who may be seeing this the first time, these are pseudonym names. So this is actually not specific identifying information about the child. Is that right?
Thank you for mentioning that, Catherine. These are pseudonyms, and yeah, they want to protect the privacy and confidentiality of the children. So there are never any diagnoses contained in these websites, but they do provide a general, I guess, overview of the child's current functioning, their special considerations, and what they're looking for in an adoptive family, right?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Training and education, again, I can't say enough about the value during the waiting period, whether you're waiting to get a home study done or you're adopt ready and you're waiting for a match, to read as much as you can about issues pertaining to the needs children bring to placement and lifelong issues in adoption. So we offer a full range of webinars beginning with how to adopt. If you're just starting out and you're not sure what type of adoption you want to explore, right through to, where did they go? Yeah, here's quite a list of all our webinars. ACEs, so adverse childhood experiences and developmental trauma. So again, the vast majority of children will have experienced some form of trauma. So the more you learn about it, the more confident and competent you'll feel as that child's adoptive parent. FASD, I can't say enough about how important it is to learn about prenatal exposure to alcohol and drugs, and openness in adoption. Most people, I would say 99.9% of people are nervous when they hear that openness is the norm and not the trend in adoption today. Yes. And again, I think once you learn more about it, the more confident you'll feel and more eager you will.
Yeah, I think the notion of it can be pretty scary, but when you're actually going through it and you realize the amount of support as well that's out there, it's not as foreign as it may seem at first. Well, this is fantastic, and I know that we're focusing on perspective in awaiting families, but I do know that the ACO provides ongoing support and resources for adoptive, kinship, and customary care families as well. So it's just great to know what the website is and to be in contact with people so that as the transition is happening, as your child is being placed, as that matching is happening, you know what other resources. Pathways, for instance, was probably one of the life-changing trainings that I took. And I know a lot of families others say the same as well. So I think just kind of being aware of what's out there, even post, doing that kind of research, keeping that in your journal, maybe in a different section so that when the placement does happen, you're not, frazzled trying to find out what to do next too.
Exactly. And then on to that, to your point there, Catherine, for families that need support pre or post placement, we do have, support groups as well as a list of adoption competent therapists. So these are therapists who have done specific training. They've done training that's a sister training to Pathways, a very comprehensive program on issues, research, therapeutic interventions for working with adoptive families. So anyone wanting to access counseling and support services can go to our search engine, and you'll find that our therapists specialize in different areas in adoption as well. So they'll be able to find someone that will be a good fit for them and their family.
Yeah, and I know even that's our number one question that we get is, does anyone know of a trauma-informed therapist? And we always are just referring back to the ACT training, to the professionals. And I think that it's good to know that, if a child is receiving therapeutic services wherever they are living right now, knowing that you can engage in that during the transition and know who it is that you can reach out to, I think is huge, because families can feel lost a lot of times, and having all your ducks in a row and having, who to contact and where to go, I think helps alleviate some of that stress that, that you've been talking about.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Just to wrap this up, Catherine, if anybody has questions about the Adoption Council of Ontario or anything that I've shared today, here's the tab. You just click on there. You can contact us by sending us this form completed, or you can phone us. Our contact information is on the website.
Perfect. And I'm pretty sure I saw Chantel posting the website in our comments section. If she hasn't, this is just a beautiful prompt for her to post the website on now, just so that people can have access to it. Because it is a really fantastic resource. I know that we often use it ourselves. I really appreciate you coming. This 45 minutes came by really quick. But you're just a wealth of information, and I realized that there were questions that we haven't been able to get through. But the good thing is that this is just questions that we can ask at a later time. So because I know that there's a lot of families who are needing this support, and I think the advice that you gave, I had a lot of learning, and I can see from the comments in the chat that a lot of people have learned from you today. So I just want to thank you so much for joining us and for sharing. If we didn't get to your question, I do apologize. We will make sure that we can connect off screen as well if needed. You can always email us at support@adoptforlife.com as well. And thankfully, I also have Judy's email. So if needed, I can contact my friends at the ACO. I want to invite you all watching to please join us for next month's Snack and Chat. That's going to be on February 15th at the same time, 12:15. It's going to be a special Snack and Chat episode as we celebrate Black History Month, and we're going to chat about the Black experience. So I really appreciate it. Judy, thank you so much again. I really appreciate learning from you always, and I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.